Thank you, thank you. So wonderful to come to Hilton Head. Can you think of a more beautiful place to live? Answer no. That's why most of you are here. You are wise, wise people. God bless each one of you. Thanks for coming out this afternoon. Indeed, to start out listening to an economist, I mean, come on. Economists have predicted 8 of the last 3 recessions. Most economists choose to become economists because they do not have the personality to become an accountant. It's been a privilege to be born and raised on a farm in Colorado, be able to go to college, be in college for 10 years, as a matter of fact, for 3 degrees, all in economics, getting my doctorate degree in economics, and then being a professor of economics for 20 years, and then as senior economist at the National Center for Policy Analysis for the subsequent 20 years. It's been a great, great ride. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I'm going to bring a bunch of this to this platform and to what we're going to do today. We've already seen on the screen a minute ago that we have about 7.3 billion people on the earth today, and by mid-century we will have about darn near 8.5 billion people. This emerging world is wanting to urbanize. They prefer to go to the city rather than staying on the countryside. And so as they make their way to the city, enormous need for infrastructure, enormous needs for railway, roads, airports, tremendous need of steel and concrete and energy, needs for education and technology. And so it seems to me that this is a ripe and fertile soil for what may appear to be partly America's opportunity as we begin to look to the future. For example, we're well into the globalized world, even as we know it. 1 out of every 3 manufacturing jobs are internationally related. 1 in every 3 acres that we plant is exported to the rest of the world. We have 293,000 companies involved in the import-export business and certainly international trade. So America is already deeply, deeply embedded into a globalized economic system. It's not going to go away, and by and large, it's a big plus because there's nothing like trade. Economists the world throughout will say trade is like an unstoppable machine. It's when you allow people to specialize in trade, it is really, really the way that you want to create wealth. So we've got all these global customers, and we sit here in 2015 and say, wait, isn't the world economy stalled out right now? Indeed it is. For a number of reasons, and probably the biggest reason of debt. Debt will always inhibit future growth. Every nation has chosen to go into debt big time. Japan is in such debt that it's been in a recession for almost 30 years. Europe is anemic. Africa has just finished 50 years of socialism, 1950 through the year 2000. 50 years of socialism, and so Africa is just trying to get its feet. Russia has its own set of problems with gas and oil prices being down and energy prices being down, so that hurts them. So we've got kind of a struggling world. 2 moose hunters went to Alaska to hunt moose. They were on a tight schedule. The pilot said, guys, I'm going to pick you up at the edge of this lake in 3 days. Be ready. So sure enough, He lands the airplane. They're all ready to go. They load up all the stuff on the airplane. They're ready to take off. And they said, wait, what about our moose? And the pilot said, you shot a moose? No, we each shot a moose. The pilot says, guys, we get those moose on these pontoons on this airplane. It's too much weight. We'll never get off the water. We did it last year. And the pilot is shocked. You did? You did? So out of the airplane, one moose on one pontoon, another moose on another pontoon. They taxi to the edge of the lake. They wind up their engine. They release the brakes. They come across the water faster. They barely lift off. Bam! They hit a tree. There's moose meat, an airplane everywhere. One of the hunters is dragging in the mud and say, Joe, where are we? Where are we? And Joe's hanging up in a tree saying, from what I can tell, 50 feet farther than last year. Well, this economy, I'm hoping that where we're stuck right now will just be 50 feet farther than last year. I'm hoping we can get out, and I'm quite sure that we're going to be able to get out, and I'll be giving some of those reasons as we move through this speech. I took a sabbatical 3 years ago. Not speaking, not traveling, traveling a lot, but another fellow and I decided to go to the 10 poorest places on the earth. And so we went to Papua New Guinea, we went to India, different cities, we went to China, different cities, we went to 10 or 15 cities in Africa, and a number of cities, a number of places in South America. Friends, I got to share something with you, that poverty has been the condition of humans from day one. From the beginning of man down to the thousands and thousands and thousands of years, poverty. That began to shift just a little bit in the year 1750. That means we came through all these thousands of years with less than $2 of annual per capita income, and we now come out here with about just the 300 years to go before you get to the 21st century, and we begin to see just a little bit of an uptake in economic growth. Poverty has been the natural condition. Poverty is. Gravity is. Leaves are green. The sun comes up in the east. You don't have to design it, manage it. It happens. Poverty just happens. And it has been prevalent throughout the world, and it's a very, very difficult problem to overcome. Nation after nation has tried to figure it out. Well, naturally, they're going to use economic systems to try to figure out how do we get out of this. So we try hunting and gathering. We try subsistence farming. We try slavery. We try feudalism. We tried mercantilism. We tried colonialism. We tried socialism. We'll try communism. We'll try try what you might. There is no economic system on the planet that lifts people out of poverty other than the one called free market capitalism. Now, as we've traveled back after the book was written and talked, hey, we didn't necessarily know we were going to come to that kind of a conclusion, because I guarantee you, when you're in South America, capitalism is not a favorite term. When you're in Western Europe, and even to a degree, a lot of Eastern Europe, capitalism is not a favorite term. So Barry, please don't tell me that free market capitalism is the only way to get liftoff. Indeed, that's what we said in our book, and we try to make the case for that. Not only do the other economic systems not work very well, not only do they not pull people out of poverty, but interestingly, the religions that most places and most nations choose are also very, very progress resistant. When the Muslims and the Hindus do not educate their women, that is progress resistant. When the Hindus do not accept change, that is, you're born into a certain caste and you stay there, wait, that is progress resistant. It's much more difficult to get out of poverty when your religion is continually progress resistant. So we sit with the leaders in Haiti and visit with them for a little while, and we say, look it. There's two things that you really can't happen very quickly, because they're in the culture, they're in the bloodstream, and people are not going to change. Their economic system and the religion. So, back to Haiti. Look it. Go ahead and practice voodooism until you're blue in the face. Do voodooism forever. But as economists, we share with you that voodooism is the most progress-resistant religion in the world. So practice it if you want to, practice it if you might, but Haiti will always be in poverty if that continues. So religion can be a very much of a progress-resistant force. Prime Minister Singh was the finance minister of India, and then he becomes the prime minister of India. He stands in front of millions, billions of fellow Indians, and he says, look, as your finance minister, as your prime minister, it's been my privilege to travel and see the world. Here's what I've seen. I go to Silicon Valley, California, and Indians from India are the richest demographic group. I traveled to Cape Town, South Africa, and lo and behold, Indians from India are the richest demographic group. I go into Africa, go to Kenya, and I find that Indians from India are producing 70% of the wealth in this country. What's going on here? Come back to India, poverty. What's wrong with this picture? Something's fundamentally wrong. And so Prime Minister Singh says, perhaps we've got to view the caste in a bit different way. We have wonderful Hindu scholars who say that a full bag is heavy to carry, but an empty bag is even heavier. Well, you could make a whole economic system out of that phrase. A full bag is heavy to carry, but an empty bag is even heavier. Indeed, poverty is a heavy load to carry. Is this what we're going to do? Are we going to so resist change? The British come in India, want to build railroads. They do build railroads. They brought in tens of thousands of wheelbarrows to help build those railroads. They never used one wheelbarrow. No, we're not going to carry heavy weight with a wheelbarrow. We're going to put a basket on our head and carry it this way. Now, friends, I will only share with you that when you fight the wheel, you're progress resistant. A wheel is critical. So, there you have how the world is going when it comes to poverty now. So, when we began to look at these places, New Guinea, India, China, South America, and Africa, we said, by golly, we are going to write a book that takes a little bit different slant. The slant is that every human being is a human being, that every human being has dignity, that every human being is created in the image of God, and therefore has unlimited potential. God's a creator and human beings a creator. And just because you were born in South America or India or China or in Africa does not put you outside the fence of being a creator and an innovator and so on. So we wrote the book, The Poverty of Nations. Our cover of our book shows a color coordination of the wealth of countries that are doing very well are green, countries that are doing pretty well are blue, and countries that are not doing very well at all or less than $1 or $2 of annual per capita income are the ones that are red and brown. But what we say to all the countries is this. A number of years ago, the whole map is dark brown. Everybody's in poverty. Prior to 1700 AD, everybody's in poverty. So we come to you then, not with ideas that are going to save you. We come with, here's the way others, countries have got out of poverty. And we're going to share some of those ideas with you. So you don't have to study this very long to find out that foreign aid is by and large a joke. Foreign aid, it's wasted money. Helping people to become helpless is not an act of kindness. That what people need is a sewing machine, not a sweater. What people need is a hand up, not a hand out. Because helping people to become helpless is not an act of kindness. And so what then can be done to be hand up? Hand up. A few months ago, I was in Uganda. Spent 11 days lecturing in Uganda, and I got to tell you, Uganda, of all the 55 African countries, Uganda is one of the poor, no doubt about it. Less than $1,500 of annual per capita income. So as far as income-wise, a very, very poor country. Nevertheless, Uganda is called the Pearl of Africa. Why? Because Uganda sits there in the middle of Africa, about 2,000 feet higher than a lot of the other nations, which creates a weather system that is very, very pleasant. Every day that I called back to Phoenix, Arizona, and talked to my wife, I said, Mandy, this whole time in Uganda, I feel like I'm at the Garden of Eden. It's so beautiful. Mandy, and I'm telling you, I'm falling in love with these monkeys. I have my coffee in the morning, and they're coming out, and they're visiting with me. And I'm talking to these monkeys. I'm going to miss them so much when I come back to Arizona. So the Pearl, I totally understand why Uganda is called the Pearl of Africa. So in some ways, so beautiful, excruciatingly beautiful. I mean, kind of like Hilton Head. But that's another story. Well, I kind of mean that. I mean, it just feels so delightful to be on this island. Well, anyway, back to Uganda. Okay, but all's not picture. All's not pretty. I'm riding with a doctor. We're driving down. She says, you know, I've got a little makeshift hospital. Would you like to come and see it? It was 9 o'clock on Sunday night. I said, yes. So we went into the hospital. We got to room, and we came into a room, and it was a concrete floor, and 5 women were laying on that concrete floor having babies, no doctors, no nurses, no help, all by themselves having a baby. The doctor then tells me that 6,500 women lose their lives giving birth in Uganda every year. Now, Uganda is a country of 30 million people, same size as Canada. Canada loses less than 10 women a year giving birth. Uganda loses 6,500. Well, you see this, it breaks your heart, and you want to curl up in a little ball and kind of die. You feel so badly for not only them, but for so much poverty in Uganda. So you can either all curl up and say there's no hope, or you can say, let's make something happen, i.e. a hand up. A hand up, a hand up. I'll tell you a hand up. I can go back to the United States, and I know I can raise $2 or $3 million. She had an organization called Save the Mothers. Save the mothers. The mothers in Uganda are all dying, giving birth. Save the mothers. And so I said I'll help her. Came back, got some money, and guess what? We're going to be able to try to move not only 6,500 women dying, but we want to move it into the hundreds as soon as possible. You don't need doctors, you don't need nurses, you need just some people specially trained in helping give birth. There's 8 or 10 tricks. She was going to show me some, and I say, I'll not be able to use any of this knowledge back in the United States, and they won't let me because I don't have an MD degree, blah, blah, or a nurse or an LPN or a registered nurse or whatever. But there's hope. Dear friends, there is hope. The poor people of this world. So as an economist, how can I help? How can I get them a hand up? Not a handout. But how come I get, well, I learned about the handout. I mean, our church has adopted a whole village in Tanzania, and we're going to help all those kids get through all the way through school and all the way through college, and we've made a 20-year commitment to them. We're in our 12th year, and it is really, really special. But so I'm kind of standing, we dug 4 water wells and this, that, and other. So it's kind of exciting. We've sent dozens, hundreds of doctors and dentists down there to do dental work, blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on. So I'm standing next to this Tanzanian. He said, so are you from the States? I said, yes. He says, is your organization part of this village? And I thought for sure he was going to be happy and say something nice to me. Think again. He said, well, thanks a lot. You come in and you build water wells for free. That's my business, digging water wells. I can't do it for free. So you've put me out of business. See what I mean? Helping people to become more helpless is not an act of kindness. The intention was right, the intention is good, but the outcome is not so good. The clothing business has no chance in Africa ever. Why? Because, let's be honest. I'll wear this tie 2 or 3 more times. I'll wear this jacket 5 or 10, 20 more times, but it will be far from worn out when I'm done with this jacket and pants and shirt and ladies' blouses and all that. We send boxes. It was incredible to teach at Uganda University. And 25,000 students, every one of the girls was wearing 6-inch heels. My wife doesn't even have any 6. Well, she wouldn't want that age lady probably to have a 6. But anyway, we send them over. You've never seen so many clothes in your life. Helping people to become helpless is not an act of kindness. So how do I, as an economist, give a hand up, not a handout? Well, the poor people of this world have some housing. Now, I got to tell you, Uganda and otherwise, whether it's India, South America, Africa, housing, I guess you would call it housing. It's poor. It's cardboard. It's tin. But they have some housing. But guess what? They have some housing, but they don't have a title to that housing. They grow some crops, but they don't have a deed to those crops. They run some small little businesses, but they don't have articles of incorporation, which is an economist's way of saying they do not have property documents. If you do not have property documents, you can never get collateralized. If you can't get collateralized, you'll be in poverty forever. So you use examples from Taiwan, you use examples from Hong Kong, you use some examples from South Korea, you use some examples from Japan, you use some examples from Botswana, and you just try to pick off the various parts of the world that have something applicable that might help you at this moment. Well, when it comes to property documents, so I said, it's nothing I did to be so fortunate as to be born in America. I didn't do anything. But guess what? We had a founding father whose name was Thomas Jefferson, who Jefferson not only gave us a Declaration of Independence endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but a few years after that document, 1787, Thomas Jefferson gave America surveys, sections, land, verifiable addresses. Bingo! So my grandpa comes over from Russia, lands at Ellis Island in 1900, was shipped to Flint, Michigan to work on a dairy farm and says, I'm not a dairy farmer. When you said you were a farmer, but I'm not a dairy farmer. Well, what did you farm back in Russia? Sugar beets. Put my grandma and grandpa, 17 and 15 years old, on a train, sent them to Denver. On a train, they got out of the train and start walking along the Platte River, and they keep walking and walking, and they get about 90 miles out of Denver. They're out in the middle of rattlesnake country. They're out in the middle of nothing. You wouldn't give 10 cents to be born in the area that I was born in, Fort Morgan, Colorado. I mean, when you live in Hilton Head, it's nirvana. Fort Morgan is just the other side of hell. But Grandpa starts kneeling down and digging a dirt house that they can live in, underground dirt, and they said, you know, Alex, you're going to have to go to the county recorder and the county assessor and pay money. So see, all of America surveyed. So when he does that, they know exactly what Grandpa's talking about. Oh, yeah, you're out 90 miles. Oh, yeah, in Mill Hill Rose, Colorado. And so Grandpa gets to drive a stake, call it his own private property. It was John Locke who said that private property is the bulwark of freedom. Freedom is the mainspring of economic prosperity. More freedom, more bread. Freedom is a virus for which there is no antidote. Freedom is a country's best investment. The free market is a miraculous instrument of communication. The free market is a stupendous system by determining price and value and giving us a signal by which we can act. I mean, so the whole thing is wonderful beyond words, verifiable addresses. You got to have them, and you can get collateralized. And so Grandpa, by the way, my grandpa was just with him a couple days ago. He's going to be 100 years old on August 22nd. So he's still alive, that sucker, still kicking. And I get the biggest kick out of him because he's always been a gentleman. But the last 3 years, he's taken up spitting, and I can't stop him. So my wife says, I can't go to the restaurant with him anymore because it makes me sick to my stomach. And I said, sweetheart, I understand. But just because you get sick, I can make it. I have napkins in my thing. The minute he spits, I'm down on the floor cleaning up the spit. So I'm a real spit cleaner right now. But his father, my grandpa, got collateralized. And when my grandpa died, he owned 3 or 4 farms. So, because you've got to start somewhere, and you have to verify. So as an economist, so I share. So when I meet the Prime Minister of Albania, the Prime Minister of Romania, and as a matter of fact, it seems like we've got to meet obviously the presidents and the prime ministers of most of these countries. We always talk about this issue first. Is your country surveyed? Do you have verifiable addresses? Can people get collateralized in this country? We haven't thought of it. Well, I wouldn't have either had not Thomas Jefferson told me. So get a hand up, not just a hand out. This conference, conversations, little conversations. Well, let me tell you how big little conversations are. I have a friend in Boston, Massachusetts. He and his wife, a strong Catholic family from Boston, who always housed Chinese students that are coming to the greater Boston area to go to one of the good institutions there of higher learning. Lo and behold, one of these people was Deng Xiaoping's son. Now, when Mao Zedong died in 1975-76, then there was a little flutter of who's going to be the next premier of China. But starting in about 1978, they decide on Deng Xiaoping. And so he becomes the premier. Now watch these conversations. So here you have this boy, bright as can be, taking English at an English university over here in Boston, but his dad and his dad's friends talking to him about property, talking to him about verifiable addresses, talking to him about titles and deeds and articles of incorporation, that it is critical. And this kid is on the phone talking to his dad, the premier of China. And what does this premier of China do? All his training was Mao Zedong. All his training was communism. Everything was about communism. He knew nothing else except for communism, except he's got this smart-ass kid over there in Boston calling him on the phone and said, Dad, we got to get this country surveyed. Dad, we've got to start moving to ownership. Dad, you got to read John Locke. John Locke said that private property is the bulwark of freedom. Private property is little conversations. What does Deng Xiaoping do? He says, to get rich is glorious. That's what his son said. Dad, you know how they feel over here in America? To get rich is glorious. Work hard. Bust your butt. Make it happen. And then don't get envious. Don't get envious. We've got to have the Bill Gateses of life. We've got to have that kind of capital for future savings. So don't get off on some kind of kick. What are Bill and Melinda going to do with $80 billion for crying out? Don't worry about it. So little conversations, and all of a sudden China shifts positions. All of a sudden, China, Deng Xiaoping, am I a big backer of Deng Xiaoping? Of course I'm not. He was the dude in Tiananmen Square. He was the dude that came in, and thousands of people were killed in Tiananmen Square. And let me tell you, folks, it was not pretty. I mean, you've got 1,000 dead people, and in 2 hours, big scoop trucks, big bulldozers, just mopped those people, threw them in the back of the truck, those dead bodies they squirted it down, and 3 hours after it happened, Tiananmen Square looked exactly the same as it did 3 hours earlier. I wonder if that would happen today with every Chinese. A little camera. You think that would have happened? You think that would happen now? In fact, that's where I'm going now with this discussion. I want to say globalization is, and it's real, and it's good, and it's a win-win. I wanted to say that poverty, helping, giving a hand up, I could give you another 100 examples of a hand up to help them out, not a hand out. And we will get at this thing. It won't be through foreign aid. It won't be through resources. Uganda's ready to discover one of the biggest oil fields in all of Africa. Trust me, it'll all go to the leaders. Trust me, it'll all go to the tiny minority part of the rich of Uganda, and it won't affect the average person at all. So we're trying to design systems now that a whole bunch of that money, if possible, I don't know if it's possible, but a bunch of them go into infrastructure. They need roads, they need rails, they need airports, they need land development, they need leveling, they need all those things that lot money could do if somehow they could begin to use that money productively. Okay. What I really want to talk about today then is this. In 1983, I wrote a book. It was called Crossroads, The Great American Experiment. Everybody always has something in life that gets them over the edge. This was the book that did it for me. I got to stand in front of the American Bankers Association in Honolulu, Hawaii, and talk about this book. And because I talked about this book, I was invited by every state banking association in the United States with the exception of 3 states. I spoke in 47 different states. So just in banking. So this is what, but let me tell you the mistake I made in this book. In this book, I said, look, life has always been markets versus government. The political solution, the market solution. And the market solution makes so much sense, certainly as we move to the year 2000. I'm now speaking in 1983. As we move to the year 2000, surely that political model will be done with it and will be strong into the market model of privatization, limited government, voluntary exchange, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the argument in this book. I couldn't have been more wrong on that point. It's another way of saying that I thought hierarchies were going to go this way and networks were going to go this way. I truly believed that in 1983. Well, finally the year 2000 came. Even as late as 2000, only 2% of the world was using internet. As late as 2000, 2% using internet. But my point is, all of a sudden, when you start exiting the arithmetic world, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and start entering the exponential world, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, you enter that exponential world, folks, now things are cracking. Now you make things happen. And when you enter that world, at the start of this century, good, we had a little bit of the agricultural revolution. Good, we had a little bit of the industrial revolution. But that industrial revolution number 2 is really just getting going in 1900, just barely getting going. But be that as may, we had some, and it did increase wealth to some degree. And so you go back to the year 1900 and you bring a reaper into the field, and that one reaper will do the work of 15 men. Now we come to the end of the century, and now one farmer on a John Deere 45-foot self-propelled combine can do the work of 5,000 men. And then you take him out of the combine, put him on a train, unless it's one of the trains we saw, put him on a train, and one man in a diesel train can do the work of 25,000 men. Folks, now we're cooking. Now, finally, we've been break free from the speed of a horse, from the strength of an ox, from the strength of a horse, and we start moving at the speed of autos and engines and fossil fuel, even to the point of tremendous air travel around the world, even to the point of now having computers. One computer can read 1 million names and 1 million phone numbers in less than a second. That's called the speed of light. When you can digitize information, every color, everything, digitize it. Give it so many zeros, so many ones, and that's what it is. If red is, that's it. Now that system, moving at the speed of light, finds it. Yes! Well, anyway, what an interesting world we're going into, i.e. internet, i.e. smartphones, i.e. 3D printing, i.e. robotics, microtechnology, biotech, bioengineering, and this goes on and on and on. What's my point? Networks. as governments and hierarchies and kings and queens are left in the dust. I think I've used my time. I'm sad about using all my time. I'll say this about all of us now with networks. Email, internet, search engines, laptops, smartphones, desktops, spontaneous, self-organizing, horizontal, not planned by a single person, mobile, adaptive, quickly coordinated, quickly celebrated. Wow. Networks are crushing hierarchy. I'll give a one-sentence definition of network. Headless conglomerate of individual nodes networked across the globe. People who share information. People who share power. And here's why networks are so wonderful. What we cannot know grows even faster than what we can know. What we cannot know grows even faster than what we can. And the only thing that can save some of that is networks. It ain't government. It ain't top down. It ain't command and control. It's not single individuals. It's millions and millions of people who are networked, which every day makes the hierarchy less and less possible, likely, or wanted. So I'll close with the tribute that I gave at the Statue of Liberty in 1986. This is almost word for word with maybe just a touch of a detail because a lot has happened since 1986. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is the United States of America. I was born on July 4th, 1776, conceived in freedom and liberty, and that freedom has brought millions to my shores to cast their economic life with me. But that freedom has not been cheap. 1 million of my sons and daughters have lost their lives in Europe and in the Mideast and Asia and on home country. Countless families have cried in anguish as they've heard the loss of a father, son, a brother, a husband, or a sister. But thank God those lives stood for something. I am big. From the Atlantic to the Pacific to the northern reaches of Alaska to the beautiful Hawaiian Islands, I have 3.5 million square miles just teeming with economic opportunity and excitement. I have forests in Oregon, wheat fields in Kansas, oil in Texas, coal in West Virginia. I am the Empire State Building in New York City, the old Sears Tower in Chicago, Disneyland in Southern California. I have 2.5 million farms that are unequal in productivity on any place on the face of this earth. I've given birth to thousands of builders and creators and dreamers and doers and inventors and entrepreneurs, the crown prince of the system that we're talking about here. The crown prince of the free market capitalistic system is the entrepreneur, and there they sit creating wealth for us by we can't even count. I'm also a country that loves sports. I am Babe Ruth in the World Series. I am Vince Lombardi in professional football. But I'm more than just working, and I'm more than just sports. I'm a nation that also prays. I have 300,000 churches and synagogues where people gather and worship the God who is there because he is not silent. I'm a country the last 100 years that goes out and defends and doesn't conquer. I'm a country that goes out and protects and I don't possess. When I see a defeated enemy, I bind its wounds, I feed its people, I give it billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to restore itself to a place of honor among the nations of the world. A country's character, after all, is determined by the sum of its splendid deeds. I've abolished slavery. I've lifted countless people out of poverty. I've instituted more programs for health and food than all the other countries of the world put together. Now, if you compare that record with the actual histories of both ancient and contemporary societies, America might not be the best conceivable society, but it just might be the best society that's ever existed on the planet. Make mistakes? Oh, of course mistakes. Slavery was a huge one. 150 years ago, we pay an unbelievable price for that terrible mistake. 650,000 of our young men were killed in that war. 50,000 residential population. Imagine the sadness of Abraham Lincoln as he makes his way to the edge of the Gettysburg battlefield, where 50,000 men went down in 3 days. I mean, this whole thing was like 200 9/11s. Here's yours today. Here's another one tomorrow. Here's the next. We had 200 9/11s during this period. The country was bleeding to death. It's finished. It's kaput. Nothing is going to save this mess. Lincoln follows a man that had been speaking for 1.5 hours at the podium. And now Abraham Lincoln steps up. And he ends his Gettysburg address by saying, "We highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall experience a new birth of freedom, and that this government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth." He's done. It took less than 3 minutes to deliver the Gettysburg Address. The battlefield is totally quiet. A man raises his hand. "Yes, sir." Mr. President, I have a question. Can a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people survive? And Abraham Lincoln answered, "I don't know how history is going to speak on America, but I do know that Americans were born to be free." Thank you very much.
Take a break.
Thanks.